In this video, I'm gonna help you decide whether or not the Tamron 50-400mm F4.5-6.3 is the right lens for you. And I will also tell you what makes this such a special lens. Now real quick, I want to say a huge thank you to Focus Nordic for letting me borrow this lens to make this review. Without further ado, let's get right into the example footage. The most obvious benefit of this lens is probably the focal length. Here's an example shot at 50mm and here's an example shot at 400mm. And as you can see, you can get quite close to things, which is amazing. Because you can use this lens in so many different focal lengths, it means that this is such a versatile telephoto zoom lens. But some of you are probably thinking that you can't get proper background blur with this lens because it's not a fast lens, meaning that it only has an aperture of f4.5 at the wide end and f6.3 at the telephoto end. But the more you zoom the lens and the closer the subject is to the lens and the camera and the further the background is, the more you can get background blur, and you can actually get really nice background blur with this lens, which is amazing. We also did some autofocus tests where Tia, my wife, walked towards the camera both at 400mm and 50mm. And in both situations, the autofocus worked really well. And we also did this test where my wife stood up and got into the frame, and again the autofocus worked really well there. So the autofocus of this lens, it's amazing. One of the things that makes using this lens so fun is the fact that it's got stabilization inside the lens called VC, which stands for vibration compensation. And in fact, I don't think that this lens would even be usable for video handheld at 400mm if it didn't have the stabilization inside the lens. Here's an example. In this shot, there's no VC on, but on this shot, we've got the VC, the vibration compensation, on. And if we put the shots side by side, you can clearly see the difference. I mean, without the stabilization, I don't think the footage would be usable. That being said, even with the VC on, it's a bit challenging to get stable handheld footage at 400mm, but it's definitely possible to get stable footage at that focal length. But when you put it to 200mm, it's already so much easier to get stable handheld footage with the lens and with the VC on. One thing that's really good to know is that the barrel of this lens extends quite a lot when you zoom it all the way to 400mm, which means that this lens is quite front heavy, which actually doesn't bother me at all, but that means that this lens is not ideal to use on a gimbal, obviously. The weight of the lens is 1,115 grams or 2.5 pounds, which in my opinion is just right. It's not too heavy, but it's not too light. Let me explain. Because when you're filming with a zoom lens that can zoom all the way to 400mm and you're filming handheld, you want it to have a bit of weight, because the weight of the lens and the camera alone helps you to stabilize the footage. But if it's too heavy, I don't want to carry it in my camera bag. I like the build quality of the lens. It's got weather sealing and it's got this focus button. It's got the VC switch for the stabilization inside the lens, and it's got this custom switch where you can set different custom settings. We also took some example photos with the lens. The price of this lens is $1,299, but who is it good for? Well, if you're looking for a versatile telephoto zoom lens that can be used in so many different situations, then this is very good because at 50mm you can shoot with it, for example, in the streets because it's fairly wide. But at 400mm you can zoom out and use it, for example, for sports photography or videography. So it's great for wildlife or sports photography or videography, or you can use it in situations where you need to zoom out and film with a long focal length and make the subject appear moving faster than it actually is. For example, an action sequence when someone's running, or you need to film for a commercial, for example, cars or vehicles, or you just need a very versatile lens for traveling and family vacations, then this is a really great option for so many different uses. If you found this video helpful and want to learn more about Tamron's telephoto lenses, then I highly recommend that you watch either one of these videos somewhere here on the screen because I think you're gonna find it helpful as well. Alright, thanks for watching and I'll see you again in the next video. Take care.